The cargo hauler shuddered as it docked with Meridian Prime, and Day-Wan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. 3 weeks in space with a faulty stabilizer had turned what should have been a simple delivery run into a nightmare of constant course corrections. He unbuckled from the pilot seat and stretched, his back protesting every movement. Meridian Prime, this is cargo vessel Blue 7 docking complete. I've got medical supplies for Bay 12, he said into the comm. Confirmed, Blue 7. Bay 12 is currently occupied. Please stand by in the visitor gallery. Estimated wait time is 2 hours. Day-Wan groaned. 2 hours of waiting on a station where everything cost twice what it did on Earth. He grabbed his jacket and headed out, figuring he might as well see what the fuss was about. Meridian Prime was one of the biggest neutral stations in the galaxy, and something was always happening here. The station corridors were packed with aliens of every type. Tall Kryn warriors moved through the crowds with their reptilian grace. Small Thessians floated past in their environmental bubbles, their large eyes watching everything. Even a few Vormec, those strange rock-like beings, stood in corners like living statues. Day-One had been flying cargo for 5 years now, but he still wasn't used to the sheer variety of life the galaxy held. He followed the crowd toward a large observation deck, curious about what had drawn so many people. When he stepped through the doors, his jaw dropped. The chamber below was enormous, circular, with stadium seating rising up on all sides. In the center, suspended in a shimmering energy field, was a sword. Even from this distance, Day-Wan could see it was beautiful. The blade seemed to be made of crystal or glass, but it glowed with an inner light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Colors shifted across its surface, blues and purples and silvers that moved like liquid. First time seeing the eternal blade? Asked a voice beside him. Day-Wan turned to see a Thessian floating nearby, its translator device humming. Yeah, what is it? The last great treasure of the Valtari civilization. They've been dead for 3,000 years, but their weapons remain. That sword has rejected every warrior who tried to claim it. Today, the Galactic Council holds an auction. Whoever the blade accepts will become the most powerful being in known space. Day-Wan watched as a massive Kryn general stepped into the arena below. The alien was covered in ceremonial armor, his scales gleaming under the lights. He approached the sword with confidence, reaching out toward the containment field. The field dropped. The moment the Kryn's hand touched the sword's hilt, light exploded outward. The general flew backward, slamming into the arena wall with enough force to crack the reinforced material. He didn't get up. Medical teams rushed forward. 68th attempt today, the Thessian said. 68th rejection. For the next hour, Day-Wan watched warrior after warrior try and fail. A Thessian psychic master who collapsed with blood streaming from her nose. 3 Vormec who tried together and were all knocked unconscious. Even a human champion. Some soldier from Earth's military who lasted 3 seconds before the sword threw him across the arena. Why does it keep rejecting them? Day-Wan asked. No one knows. The Valtari left no instructions. Some say the sword judges worthiness. Others believe it searches for a specific genetic marker. There are theories that it needs a particular brainwave pattern. The Thessian rippled in what might have been a shrug. All we know is that it has never accepted anyone. An announcement echoed through the chamber. Final attempt of the cycle. If this warrior fails, the eternal blade will be sealed for another century. A hush fell over the crowd. The last warrior, another Kryn covered in battle scars, entered the arena. He moved slowly, deliberately. When he reached for the sword, Day-Wan found himself leaning forward, hoping somehow this one would succeed. The rejection was immediate and violent. The warrior flew backward, and this time the energy discharge didn't stop. Lights flickered throughout the observation deck. Alarms began to wail. Hull breach in Section 7. All personnel evacuate to designated safe zones. Panic erupted. Thousands of aliens rushed toward the exits, pushing and shoving. Day-Wan tried to move with the crowd, but a surge of Vormec pushed him sideways. He stumbled through a maintenance door, finding himself in a narrow corridor away from the main evacuation routes. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. Day-Wan ran, trying to remember the station layout, but every corridor looked the same. He could hear the distant roar of air escaping through the breach. His heart hammered in his chest. He turned a corner and stopped dead. Somehow he had ended up back near the arena, but from a different angle. The containment field around the sword was flickering, failing. Through the observation window, he could see the blade floating alone in the center of the arena, abandoned by the fleeing crowds. The window shattered. Explosive decompression pulled at Day-Wan. He grabbed a support beam, holding on as debris flew past him toward the arena. Emergency bulkheads were coming down, trying to seal the breach, but they were slow. Too slow, he had to move, had to get out. But his path forward took him across the arena floor. There was no other way to the functioning evacuation corridor on the far side. Daewon let go of the beam and ran, sprinting across the open space, his boots echoing on the polished floor. The sword hung in the air directly in his path. Daewon wasn't thinking about claiming it or touching it. He just needed to get past it, needed to survive. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears, could feel it shaking his entire body. Fear and adrenaline coursed through his veins. As he ran past the sword, it moved. The blade shifted in the air, rotating to follow him. The pulsing light within it began to beat faster, matching rhythm with something. It took Daewon a moment to realize what. It was matching his heartbeat. He skidded to a stop, turning back. The sword floated there, now pulsing in perfect time with his racing heart. The colors within it swirled faster, brighter. It drifted toward him. "No," Daewon whispered. "I'm nobody. I'm just a cargo pilot." The sword didn't care. It moved closer, its hilt rotating to present itself to him. The light grew blinding. Behind him, he could hear security teams shouting, could hear the emergency bulkheads finally slamming into place. The breach was being sealed, but none of that mattered because the Eternal Blade, the weapon that had rejected every warrior in 3,000 years, was offering itself to him. Daewon reached out without thinking, his hand closing around the hilt. Power flooded into him. Knowledge, skill, the experience of 1,000 warriors downloaded directly into his mind. He gasped, falling to his knees, but he didn't let go. Couldn't let go. The sword was part of him now, connected to his heartbeat, to his soul. When security finally reached him, they found Daewon kneeling in the center of the arena, the Eternal Blade held loosely in his hands, its light finally calm and steady. The sword had chosen, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 days after the sword chose him, Daewon still couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, combat techniques flooded his mind. He knew 17 ways to kill with a blade. He understood battle tactics from civilizations that died before Earth discovered fire. The knowledge was there, planted deep in his brain, but it felt wrong. Foreign. Like wearing someone else's skin. He sat in the small quarters the council had given him, staring at the Eternal Blade propped against the wall. In the dim light, it still pulsed faintly, keeping time with his heart. A knock on the door made him jump. "It's Hyojin. Can I come in?" Daewon opened the door to find a woman about his age carrying a stack of data tablets. She wore the simple gray uniform of the research division, her hair pulled back in a practical bun. He'd met her 2 days ago when the council assigned her as his cultural advisor. Whatever that meant. "You look terrible," she said, walking past him into the room. "Thanks. That helps." She set the tablets on the table and turned to face him. "Have you slept at all?" "No. Every time I try, I see fighting, battles, wars. Hyojin, I'm a cargo pilot. I've never even been in a real fight. Now I have 3,000 years of violence in my head." She nodded slowly. The Valtari designed their weapons to transfer knowledge, but they never meant for warriors to use them. "What?" Hyojin pulled up a hologram from one of her tablets. Ancient text appeared in the air, slowly translating to Korean. "I've been going through the Valtari archives all night. Look at this. It's from their final period, right before they disappeared. The Valtari didn't believe in glorifying combat. They thought true strength came from survival, not conquest." Daewon read the floating text. It talked about choosing guardians, not champions. About finding those who endured rather than those who dominated. So why does everyone think the sword picks warriors? Because everyone who tried to claim it was a warrior. The Kryn sent their generals. The Thessians sent their psychic masters. Everyone sent their best fighters, so everyone assumed that's what the sword wanted. She looked at him. "But you're not a fighter." "No, I'm really not. So why did it choose you?" Daewon thought about that moment in the arena. Running. Scared. His heart pounding so hard he thought it would burst. "I was just trying to survive." "Trying to get out?" "Exactly." Hyojin's eyes lit up with excitement. That's what the sword heard. Not the heartbeat of a warrior looking for glory, the heartbeat of someone fighting to live. Before Daewon could respond, his comm unit buzzed. An official summons from the council chambers. They wanted him in an hour. The council chambers were designed to intimidate. Representatives from dozens of species sat in a massive circular room. all looking down at the small platform in the center where Daewon stood. The eternal blade hung at his side, and he was acutely aware of every eye on it. The Kryn ambassador stood first. He was tall even for his species, his scales a deep crimson that marked him as nobility. The Kryn Empire contests the blade's choice. This human has no military training, no combat experience. He cannot be trusted with a weapon of such power. The sword chose him, Ambassador Vexthor, said the council head, a elderly Thessian whose name Daewon couldn't pronounce. We cannot undo that, then let him prove his worth. The council allows trial demonstrations for all artifact bearers. Let us see if this human can even control the blade. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The council head looked at Daewon. Do you consent to a demonstration? What choice did he have? Daewon nodded. They took him to a training facility deep in the station. A massive room with reinforced walls and energy dampeners. Targets stood at various distances. They handed him protective gear that he barely knew how to put on. Simple test, Vexthor said. Hit the targets. Show us the sword's power. Daewon drew the blade. It felt light in his hand, perfectly balanced. The knowledge in his head told him exactly how to stand, how to grip, how to channel the sword's energy. But knowing and doing were different things. He focused on the nearest target and swung. Energy erupted from the blade, but it came out wrong. Too much power. The blast shot past the target and hit the wall, leaving a smoking crater. Alarms wailed. Again, Vexthor commanded. Daewon tried 5 more times. Each attempt was worse than the last. Energy sprayed everywhere. One blast nearly hit the observation window where the council representatives watched. By the time they called a halt, Daewon was shaking, exhausted, and the training room looked like a war zone. Clearly inadequate, Vexthor announced. This human cannot control the blade. For the safety of the galaxy, the weapon should be surrendered to proper authorities. Back in his quarters, Daewon sat with his head in his hands. Hyjin sat across from him, quiet for once. I'm going to lose it, he said. They're going to take the sword. Maybe that's for the best. He looked up at her, surprised. She shrugged. Daewon, you're a cargo pilot. You didn't ask for this. You don't want it. Maybe letting them take it would be easier, but it chose me. So, you can unchoose it. Give it back, go home, fly your cargo routes. Be normal again. The idea was tempting, so tempting. But when he looked at the blade still pulsing with his heartbeat, he knew he couldn't. Not because he wanted power or glory, but because the sword had trusted him. Somehow, for reasons he didn't understand, it had looked at all the warriors in the galaxy and picked him. I can't give up, he said quietly. That's not who I am. Hyjin smiled. There it is, there what is. That's why the sword chose you. You don't quit. You can't control the blade yet because you're trying to use it like a warrior would. But you're not a warrior. You're a survivor. The sword doesn't want you to dominate it. It wants you to work with it. Over the next week, Hyjin helped him train differently. Instead of trying to command the sword's power, Daewon learned to ask. Instead of forcing the energy out, he let it flow naturally. When he stopped thinking about hitting targets and started thinking about protecting what was behind him, the blade responded. It was slow progress, frustrating, but progress nonetheless. Then Earth's ambassador arrived. Commander, Yang was everything Daewon wasn't. Military, confident. She walked into his quarters like she owned the place, her uniform crisp and her jaw set. I'm here to protect you, she said without preamble. Earth's government has received intelligence that the Kryn plan to kill you regardless of what the Council decides. The trial demonstration was meant to humiliate you, to justify taking the blade by force. Why? Daewon asked. Because you're human. Because we're new to the galactic community and they don't respect us. Because a human holding the most powerful weapon in known space terrifies them. She looked at the sword. They'll invoke trial by combat. Ancient galactic law. If you refuse, Earth gets sanctioned. If you accept, they'll send their best warrior to kill you. What do you suggest? Run, hide, let me get you off this station. We'll figure something out. Hyjin shook her head. If he runs, Earth's reputation is destroyed forever. Humans will always be seen as cowards who couldn't honor their commitments. Yang glared at her. Better a living coward than a dead hero. But Daewon was already shaking his head. I won't run. I've spent my whole life running. From poverty, from the resource wars, from every hard thing that came my way. If I run now, the sword chose wrong. The sword doesn't care if you die, Yang said. No, but I do. He picked up the eternal blade. I'll face whoever they send, and maybe I'll lose, but at least I won't quit. The formal challenge arrived the next day. General Tokvar, undefeated in 40 years of combat, would face Day One in the arena of testimonies. The duel would be broadcast across the galaxy. As he read the challenge, Day One felt his heart start to race. The sword pulsed faster, matching his rhythm. But this time he wasn't just scared. He was determined. The blade had heard a heartbeat that refused to quit. Now everyone else would hear it too. The arena of testimonies had witnessed 10,000 years of conflict resolution. Ancient stone seats rose in towering circles, filled now with representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Millions more watched through holographic broadcasts. All of them waited to see if a human cargo pilot could survive against the greatest Kryn warrior alive. Day One stood in the preparation chamber, trying to steady his breathing. The eternal blade rested against the wall, its pulse rapid and anxious. Or maybe that was just his own heartbeat he was feeling. "You don't have to do this," Tai Yang said for the 100th time. She paced the small room like a caged animal. "My ship is ready. We can be off this station in 10 minutes. And then what? I spend the rest of my life hiding while Earth gets punished for my cowardice? Better than dying in the next hour." Hyejin looked up from her tablet where she'd been reviewing Valtari texts. "He's not going to die. You can't know that, no, but the sword knows." She stood and walked to Day One. "I've been reading about the Valtari philosophy of combat. They believed that fighting wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about being the most persistent. They had a saying, roughly translated as, 'The one who stands last, stands longest.'" "That's not exactly comforting," Day One muttered. "It should be, because that's who you are. You're not going to beat General Tokvar with skill or power. You're going to beat him by refusing to stay down." An announcement echoed through the chamber. "The trial will begin in 5 minutes. Participants should enter the arena." Day One picked up the sword. It felt heavier than usual. Or maybe that was just his fear adding weight. He walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at his two companions. "Thank you, both of you, for believing I could do this." Tai Yang's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, I hope I'm wrong about how this ends." The arena floor was bare stone, worn smooth by centuries of combat. Day One walked to one side while General Tokvar entered from the opposite gate. The Kryn warrior was massive up close, easily 8 feet tall, his red scales polished to a mirror shine. He carried twin plasma blades that hummed with barely contained energy. The council head's voice boomed across the arena. "This trial is sanctioned under ancient law. Combat will continue until one participant yields or is unable to continue. Lethal force is permitted. Do both parties understand?" "I understand," Tokvar said, his voice like grinding rocks. Day One swallowed hard. "I understand. Begin." Tokvar moved with terrifying speed for something so large. He closed the distance in seconds, his blades singing through the air. Day One barely got his sword up in time to block. The impact sent shockwaves up his arms, nearly knocking the blade from his grip. The general pressed his attack, raining down blows that Day One could barely parry. The knowledge in his head told him what to do, but his body couldn't keep up. He was too slow, too inexperienced. Within 30 seconds, he was bleeding from a dozen small cuts. A plasma blade scored across his ribs. Pain exploded through his side and Day One went down, rolling to avoid the follow-up strike that shattered stone where his head had been. "Stay down, human," Tokvar said. "You've shown courage. That's enough." But Day One was already climbing to his feet. His side screamed in protest. Blood dripped onto the arena floor. The eternal blade pulsed wildly in his hand, responding to his racing heart, his refusal to quit. He attacked. His strike was clumsy, desperate. Tokvar batted it aside easily and countered with a blow that sent Day One flying backward. He hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from his lungs. "Get up." The thought wasn't his own. It came from somewhere deeper, from that place where the sword connected to his heartbeat. Day One got up. Again and again the pattern repeated. Tokvar would knock him down. Day One would rise. The general's strikes were surgical, calculated to hurt but not kill. He was proving a point, showing the galaxy that the human was outmatched. But something was changing. Each time Day One stood, the sword's pulse grew steadier. Each time he raised the blade, its light grew brighter. The weapon wasn't responding to his skill or his power. It was responding to his determination, his absolute refusal to give up. Daewon stopped trying to attack like a warrior and started fighting like someone who just needed to survive. He focused on defense, on endurance, on lasting one more second. The sword began to move with him instead of against him, its energy flowing naturally rather than explosively. Tokvar noticed the change. His attacks grew more aggressive, more brutal. He was trying to end this, to put Daewon down permanently. A plasma blade cut deep into Daewon's shoulder. Another strike shattered his left knee. Daewon collapsed, unable to stand. Blood pooled beneath him. The crowd was silent, waiting for the end, but his heart still beat. The eternal blade blazed like a star. Energy poured from it, not in wild bursts, but in a steady, protective shield. When Tokvar struck again, the blade moved on its own, guided by instinct and desperation, parrying the blow that should have killed Daewon. Impossible, the general breathed. Daewon used the sword as a crutch, pulling himself upright. His left leg wouldn't support weight, but he stood on his right, the blade held between him and his opponent. He couldn't attack, could barely defend. But he was still standing. Why? Tokvar demanded. Why do you keep rising? You've lost. Everyone can see it. Because, Daewon gasped through the pain. That's what I do. I survive. Even when I shouldn't. Even when it's impossible. I keep going. The general stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked at his plasma blades, at the human barely standing before him, and something shifted in his expression. You've already won, Tokvar said quietly. What? This trial was never about defeating you in combat. It was about proving you were unworthy of the blade. But you've proven the opposite. He powered down his weapons. The Valtari chose their guardians well. Better than we knew. Tokvar turned to face the council seats. The Kryn Empire withdraws its challenge. This human has demonstrated worthiness beyond question. The arena erupted in chaos. Some species cheered, others protested. But Daewon barely heard it. He collapsed again, and this time he let himself stay down. Medical teams rushed forward. As they loaded him onto a stretcher, he kept his grip on the eternal blade. It pulsed softly now, content. Through the haze of pain and exhaustion, he heard Hyojin's voice. You did it. You actually did it. Did what? He mumbled. You stood longest. Recovery took 2 weeks. Daewon spent most of it in the medical bay. His body stitched back together with alien technology he didn't understand. Hyojin visited daily, bringing him food from Earth and reading him Valtari texts until he begged her to stop. Taeyang came once, stood awkwardly by his bed for 5 minutes, then said, You're tougher than you look, and left. When he was finally cleared to walk again, Daewon returned to his quarters to find an official message waiting. The Galactic Council wanted to see him, immediately. He limped into the council chambers, the sword at his side, and faced the assembled representatives. The Thessian council head floated forward. You've proven yourself in trial by combat. The Kryn have withdrawn their challenge, but this raises new questions. What will you do with the Eternal Blade? Daewon hadn't thought that far ahead. I don't know. Keep it safe? Keeping it safe may not be enough. The council head gestured and a hologram appeared, showing a map of the galaxy with several points marked in red. We've detected energy signatures matching Valtari technology at these locations. The sword is not alone. There are other artifacts. Why does that matter? Because, said a new voice, someone is looking for them. A Thessian floated forward, younger than the council head, his skin marked with research division symbols. I'm Jiwoo. I work in intelligence analysis. We've tracked at least 4 different factions attempting to acquire Valtari artifacts. The Thessian Collective, the Vormec communes, and at least 2 groups we haven't identified. Why? Jiwoo pulled up more data. We don't know. But the Valtari didn't disappear naturally. Something destroyed them, and whatever that was, they built weapons to fight it. If those weapons fall into the wrong hands, he didn't need to finish. Daewon understood. The sword hadn't chosen him to make him powerful. It had chosen him to stop something terrible from awakening. His simple life of flying cargo was over. The real work was just beginning. Jiwoo's workshop was chaos organized into barely controlled madness. Holographic displays covered every wall, showing star charts, energy readings, and ancient Valtari symbols. The intelligence analyst moved between them like a conductor leading an orchestra, pulling data from one screen and throwing it to another. Here, he said, highlighting a sector near the galactic rim. 3 days ago, a Thessian research vessel disappeared in this region. Before they went silent, they reported finding Valtari ruins. Daewon studied the map. His ribs still ached from the duel, and standing for long periods made his healing knee throb. Could be coincidence. Could be. Except 2 weeks before that, a Vormec expedition vanished in the same sector, and a month before that, an unidentified ship was spotted near those coordinates. Jiwoo pulled up more data. Someone is systematically searching for Valtari artifacts, and they're willing to kill for them. Hyejin leaned closer to one display, her eyes scanning the ancient text. The Valtari called their artifacts the Sentinels. According to this, they weren't separate weapons. They were pieces of a larger defense system. Defense against what? Taeyang asked from the doorway. The commander had been shadowing Daewon since the duel, officially assigned as his security detail. That's the problem. The Valtari never wrote it down. Or if they did, those records are lost. Hyejin pulled up an image of the Eternal Blade. But the sword can sense the other artifacts. It's connected to them somehow. All eyes turned to Daewon. He touched the blade's hilt and immediately felt it. A pulling sensation, like a compass needle pointing north. Multiple directions, multiple artifacts, all calling to the sword. I feel them, he said quietly. At least I think I do. It's hard to explain. Can you locate them? Jiwoo asked. Maybe if I get close enough. Taeyang crossed her arms. Absolutely not. You just barely survived a sanctioned duel. Now you want to go hunting ancient weapons while being hunted yourself? What choice do we have? If someone else gets the artifacts first, then let the Council handle it. Let Earth's military handle it. You're a cargo pilot, not a soldier. She's right, Hyejin said softly. Daewon, you've done enough. The sword chose you, but that doesn't mean you have to throw yourself into danger. But Daewon was thinking about the sword's response during the duel. It hadn't made him strong or fast. It had amplified what he already was. His determination. His refusal to quit. If the other artifacts worked the same way, if they chose people based on similar criteria, then whoever claimed them wouldn't necessarily be warriors. They'd be survivors. People who refused to give up. And in the wrong hands, that kind of determination could be terrifying. I have to go, he said. The sword chose me for a reason. I need to find the other artifacts before someone else does. The decision was made. Jiwoo provided them with a small ship, fast and equipped with scanning equipment. Taeyang insisted on coming, bringing enough weapons to arm a small platoon. Hyejin came because someone needed to translate the Valtari texts, and Daewon came because the sword was his responsibility. They called themselves a research team. In reality, they were 4 people who had no idea what they were doing, flying into unknown danger because it felt like the right thing. The first location Jiwoo identified was a dead world called Krevesh, located in a region of space called the Ember Wastes. Most civilizations avoided the area. Too many dead systems, too much radiation from an ancient supernova. Their ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel on the edge of the system. Krevesh hung in the darkness like a gray corpse, its atmosphere long since boiled away. Readings show a structure on the surface, Taeyang reported from the pilot seat. Looks artificial. Could be Valtari. As they approached, Daewon felt the sword pulse stronger. The pulling sensation intensified, pointing toward a specific location on the planet's surface. They landed nearby, suited up in environment gear, and ventured out into the wasteland. The Valtari temple was half buried in ash and dust. Ancient pillars still stood, covered in symbols that glowed faintly as Daewon approached. The sword responded to them, its light growing brighter with each step. I don't like this, Taeyang muttered, her rifle up and scanning for threats. Feels like a trap. Everything feels like a trap to you, Jiwoo said, but his hand was on his sidearm. They entered the temple through a massive doorway. Inside, the structure opened into a vast chamber. At its center, floating in a beam of light that seemed to have no source, was another artifact. Not a sword this time, but a shield. Its surface was covered in the same flowing symbols as the Eternal Blade. Daewon stepped toward it, and that's when the other ships arrived. Explosions rocked the temple as plasma fire rained down from above. Through the damaged ceiling, Daewon could see at least 3 vessels, all firing on each other and on the temple below. It's the Kryn, Taeyang shouted. Anthesian ships. They followed us. Not followed, Jiwoo corrected, pulling up his scanner. They were already here waiting. More ships appeared, Vormec. Others Daewon didn't recognize. The sky above Krevesh had become a battlefield, and they were in the middle of it, We need to get that shield and leave, Hyojin yelled over the sound of explosions. But when Daewon reached for the artifact, the world changed. Darkness flooded the temple. Not the absence of light, but something worse. Something that made the darkness feel alive and hungry. Daewon's thoughts began to slow, to fade. A voice whispered in his mind, telling him there was no point in fighting, no point in surviving, no point in anything. The sword blazed in his hand, pushing back against the darkness. Around him, he could see the others struggling. Taeyang had dropped her rifle and was on her knees. Jiwoo stared at nothing, tears streaming down his face. Hyojin was screaming. What is this? Daewon gasped. The sword showed him. Images flooded his mind. The Valtari in their final days, fighting something that couldn't be killed with weapons. An enemy that attacked the mind, the will to live, the very concept of existing. They called it the silence. The artifacts weren't weapons. They were shields against despair. Daewon understood now. The fighting outside, the different factions all scrambling for the artifacts, had weakened the seals the Valtari left behind. They were waking the silence. He stumbled toward the shield, fighting against the oppressive darkness that wanted him to lie down and give up. Every step was agony. His mind filled with memories of failure, of loss, of every time he'd wanted to quit. But he didn't quit. He reached the shield and grabbed it. Light exploded outward. The darkness screamed, a sound that wasn't sound but pure malice, and retreated. The shield synchronized with the sword, and suddenly Daewon could feel both artifacts working together. The sword's determination combined with the shield's protection. Energy poured from both artifacts, creating a barrier that pushed out in all directions. Above, the fighting ships were caught in the wave. Kryn, Thessian, Vormek, all of them suddenly stopped firing as the protective energy washed over them. Daewon fell to his knees exhausted. The artifacts dimmed but continued to pulse in harmony with his heartbeat. Around him, his team was recovering, shaking off the effects of the silence's touch. What happened? Taeyang asked, her voice shaky. We nearly woke something terrible, Hyojin whispered, staring at the temple's symbols. The Valtari didn't disappear. They sacrificed themselves to seal away the silence, and we almost undid their work. Outside, the ships were retreating. Whatever they'd all experienced, it had convinced them this wasn't worth pursuing. At least not right now. Jiwoo helped Daewon stand. We need to tell the council. If the silence can be awakened, if it's still out there, then we need to find all the artifacts before anyone else does. Daewon finished. The Valtari built them to work together. Separate, they're dangerous. Together, they might be strong enough to keep the silence sealed. They returned to their ship, carrying both the sword and shield. As they left Krivesh behind, Daewon stared at the two artifacts. They pulsed in perfect sync with each other and with his heartbeat. The sword had chosen him to be a guardian. Now he understood what he was guarding against. Not other civilizations. Not war or conquest, but something far worse. Something that wanted everyone to simply stop existing. And standing against that required the one thing he'd always had. The stubborn refusal to give up. The Galactic Council chambers had never been so packed. Representatives from every major civilization crowded the seats, all demanding answers. Daewon stood in the center, the eternal blade and the recovered shield displayed on a secure platform beside him. Both artifacts pulsed softly, their light synchronized with his heartbeat. You claim these weapons fight against something called the silence, the council head said. But you have no proof of this entity's existence. The proof is that everyone who was at Krivesh felt it, Daewon replied. Ask the Kryn, ask the Thessians. They all experienced the same thing. Ambassador Vexthor stood, his red scales gleaming under the chamber lights. Since the duel, his attitude toward Daewon had shifted from hostility to cautious respect. The human speaks truth. My warriors reported a darkness that attacked their minds. Many are still recovering. A Thessian representative floated forward. Our research vessel sent similar reports before it was lost. They described encountering a presence that made them want to cease existing. Then we have a crisis, Jiwoo said from beside Daewon. Our intelligence suggests there are at least 3 more Valtari artifacts scattered across the galaxy. If the silence can be awakened by attempts to claim them, then every faction searching for these weapons is risking catastrophe. So what do you propose? Asked a Vormek delegate, its rocky voice rumbling through the chamber. Let us find the artifacts first, Daewon said. The sword can sense them. I can locate them faster than anyone else. Once we gather them all, we can use them together to reinforce the seals the Valtari left behind. And we're supposed to trust you with that much power? Challenged another delegate. Before Daewon could answer, Hyejin stepped forward. He's not asking for power. He's asking for the chance to finish what the Valtari started. They didn't create these artifacts as weapons. They created them as a warning system, as protection against something that threatens all life. The council had considered this. If we approve this mission, you will not go alone. We will assign observers from multiple civilizations. They will ensure you do not keep the artifacts for yourself. Daewon wanted to argue, but Taeyang put a hand on his shoulder. Agreed, the commander said. But we choose our own team, and we leave within 48 hours. The council approved the mission with a narrow vote. As they left the chambers, Jiwoo pulled Daewon aside. I've been analyzing the energy signatures. I think I know where the next artifact is. He pulled up a holographic map showing a region of space thick with nebula. Here, the Twilight Expanse. It's contested territory, claimed by at least 5 different groups. Dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous, Daewon muttered. Their expanded team now included a Kryn tactical specialist named Rakthen, a Thessian scientist called Pelva, and a Vormec engineer whose name translated roughly as Stone That Endures. Daewon privately thought they should all just use that philosophy as their team motto. The journey to the Twilight Expanse took 3 days. During that time, Daewon practiced with both artifacts. The sword and shield worked together naturally, as if they'd been designed for the same person. The shield could project protective barriers while the sword cut through energy fields. Combined, they made him far more capable than he'd been with the sword alone. But capability wasn't the same as skill. He was still learning, still adapting. You're thinking too much, Taeyang said during one training session. The artifacts respond to instinct, not strategy. Easy for you to say. You've had military training, and you've had survival training, every day of your life. Trust that. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Twilight Expanse. The nebula sprawled before them like a cosmic painting, purples and blues and silvers swirling in impossible patterns. Beautiful and deadly. Readings are scattered, Pelva reported, its large eyes studying multiple displays. Too much interference from the nebula. We'll have to navigate manually. Daewon closed his eyes and focused on the pulling sensation from the artifacts. It was stronger here, more insistent. The third artifact was close. That way, he said, pointing deeper into the nebula. They flew for hours through the cosmic fog, dodging debris fields and radiation pockets. Finally, they found it. An artificial structure floating in the void, a massive ring of metal and crystal that still functioned after thousands of years. It's a Valtari station, Hyejin breathed. Intact, I didn't think any survived. They docked carefully and entered through an airlock that still worked. Inside, the station was pristine. Emergency lights cast everything in a pale blue glow. The walls were covered in Valtari script that Hyejin immediately began photographing and translating. This was a research facility, she said. They were studying the silence here, trying to understand it. Did they succeed? Jiwoo asked. I don't know. The logs end abruptly, but they mention a containment chamber at the station's core. That's where the pulling sensation led, through empty corridors and vast chambers, past rooms full of equipment that still hummed with power. The Valtari had built things to last. The containment chamber was enormous, and at its center, suspended in multiple energy fields, was the third artifact. Not a weapon or shield this time, but a crown. Its surface rippled with light, and just looking at it made Daewon's head ache. That's different from the others, Rakthen observed, his warrior instincts clearly on alert. It's a mental amplifier, Pelva said, studying it with scientific instruments. The Valtari used it to strengthen their minds against the silence's influence. Daewon approached the containment field. The sword and shield pulsed faster, recognizing their companion. But something felt wrong. The darkness he'd felt on Kravesh was stronger here, closer. We need to hurry, he said. But as he reached for the controls to lower the containment field. The station shuddered. Alarms began to wail throughout the facility. "We have incoming ships," Tae-Yang reported through the comm. "Multiple signatures. They must have followed us." "Lower the field," Daewon ordered. "I'll get the crown." Jiwoo worked the controls while the others took defensive positions. The field dropped, and Daewon reached for the crown. The moment his fingers touched it, power flooded into him. Not physical power like the sword gave him, but mental clarity. His thoughts sharpened, focused, and he could suddenly sense the silence clearly. It was all around them, always had been, pressing against reality like water against a dam. The Valtari artifacts were the dam holding it back, but the dam was cracking. Darkness exploded into the chamber, not metaphorical this time, but visible, physical. Black tendrils of nothing reached through walls and floors, seeking living minds to extinguish. The team scattered, but there was nowhere to run. Daewon raised the shield. Energy poured from it, creating a barrier, but the darkness pushed back. The sword blazed in his other hand, cutting at the tendrils, but there were too many. The crown on his head burned with mental fire, keeping his thoughts clear while everyone else began to succumb to despair. He could see his team falling. Tae-Yang dropped her weapon, staring at nothing. Rakthan collapsed, his scales turning dull. Even stone that endures cracked, pieces of its body crumbling. Daewon stood alone against the silence, holding 3 Valtari artifacts, and he understood. The artifacts didn't make him powerful enough to fight this thing. They made him aware enough to know he was completely outmatched. But awareness wasn't the same as acceptance. His heart pounded, and the artifacts pulsed with it. The sword responded to his determination. The shield to his need to protect. The crown to his absolute refusal to let anyone else die. He stopped trying to fight the silence and started trying to understand it. The crown let him see deeper past the darkness to what lay beneath. The silence wasn't evil. It wasn't even alive in any way he understood. It was emptiness given form, the absence of existence made manifest. The Valtari hadn't fought it. They'd contained it, and containment required someone willing to stand at the seal forever, holding the darkness back with nothing but determination. Daewon made a choice. He pushed all 3 artifacts to their limit, pouring every ounce of will he had into them. The sword's determination, the shield's protection, the crown's clarity, all amplified by his own stubborn refusal to quit. Energy exploded outward, not attacking the silence but weaving around it, creating new seals, stronger seals. The darkness screamed and retreated, not destroyed, but pushed back, locked away once more behind barriers that would hold for centuries. The effort nearly killed him. Daewon collapsed, the artifacts falling around him. His heartbeat slowed, stuttered. Then someone grabbed his hand. Haijin, shaking off the silence's influence, holding on to him. "Don't you dare quit now," she said. Tae-Yang pulled herself upright and crawled to his other side. "That's an order?" Jiwoo, Rakthan, Pelva, even Stone That Endures, all of them recovered and gathered around him. Their presence, their living heartbeats pulled him back from the edge. The sword pulsed weakly. The shield flickered. The crown dimmed. But they were all still active, still connected to him, still choosing him. 3 weeks later, Daewon stood before the Galactic Council again. This time the atmosphere was different. No hostility, no challenges, just quiet respect. "You've proven the threat is real," the council head said. "The silence exists, and the Valtari artifacts are all that holds it back." "What happens now?" "Now we find the remaining artifacts," Daewon said. "We strengthen the seals, and we make sure no one accidentally awakens the silence again. The council offers you an official position, Guardian of Valtari Technology. You will have resources, support, protection. I accept. On one condition. My team comes with me. All of them." The council agreed. Earth was granted a permanent seat. Humanity's position in the galactic community shifted from newcomers to recognized protectors. But Daewon barely noticed the politics. He was too busy planning the next expedition with Haijin, arguing with Tae-Yang about security protocols, and listening to Jiwoo explain his latest findings about artifact locations. The sword hung at his side, the shield on his back, the crown in protective storage. All 3 artifacts pulsed in rhythm with his heart. He was no longer a cargo pilot. He was a guardian, a protector, the person chosen by ancient weapons to stand against an ancient darkness. And he would stand, not because he was strong or skilled or special, but because his heart kept beating even when the universe said it should stop, and sometimes that was all the galaxy needed. A heartbeat that refused to quit. A heartbeat that echoed across the stars saying one simple thing: I'm still here. And I'm not giving up.